welcome to the Fantasy Rewind Podcast. I'm your co-host, Dylan Stoll, and I'm joined as always by my friend, Michael Whifford.
Hey!
So today, we are going to be talking about Episode 2, Season 2 of Shadow and Bone, titled...
Rusalye.
Rusalye. All right, weird pronunciation, but we're rolling with it.
Yes, and it is part of the folklore in the Grishaverse, and it means the ice dragon or the sea whip, as it's referred to in the show.
So before we dive into Episode 2 here, I'm just going to give out the typical reminders. If you want to get in contact with the show, you can send us an email, which is fantasyrewindpod@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram, which is @fantasyrewindpod. We're also on Twitter, which is @fantasyrewind. All right, without any further delay, let's dive into the rewind.
Fantasy Rewind. All right, Episode 2 of Season 2. Dylan, initial thoughts on it?
So my initial thoughts on this episode were that, holy cow, a lot happened, and I can't believe we're already here for Episode 2.
Okay, I'm glad you brought this up because I felt the same way. Last episode we talked about how long we thought it would take them and stuff, and we were both kind of like, oh, it'll probably take a little bit. Nope, next episode, boom.
Right,
and
right off the bat.
I'm imagining because she was like, we need to, go to East Ravka for the Firebird, right, which they named in this episode because they just got the Sea Whip, so the Firebird's next, and then to the Fold. So do you think episode, like it's just going to go bam, bam, bam?
At this pace, who knows? Yeah, I just think, this episode, so much happened. And I know we have multiple storylines going on, but a lot happened here that I thought might have taken a lot longer. I think a big part of what I'm seeing as well is also just, oh my gosh, how fast is this story going to go with 8 episodes for this season? Are they going to do what you said, which is just episode this, episode that, bang, 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 we're done with the season? Especially because I think they probably want this to be at least a 3-season show, which, again, I have no idea how they're going to do that if they keep going at this pace. All in all, I did enjoy this episode. I thought that it was really cool. So much happened that I feel like we need to talk about. So why don't we just start diving in and we'll tackle storyline by storyline.
Real fast, other thoughts on it was just, I really still enjoying it all. I think they're doing, even though it's going really fast, it's very satisfying. Nothing's done in a way where I'm like, ugh, cringe, or
yeah, same.
How'd they do that? It all makes sense. It all flows really well. And yeah, so we have, three, I guess 4 storylines now?
4, let's go with 4, yeah.
So we have the shortest one is the prison one right now, which is tied into the Crow's storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got, I want to start here because it's just so small and we can get it out of the way.
Yep.
But we have prisoner there. Man, I can't remember his name. Matthew?
Yeah, it's like Mateus or something like that.
Yeah. And so we find out, they're served lobster, but it's like rancid lobster, which is just wild. I was like, wow, they're fed well. And then it's like...
I know, right?
No, they're not. And so he's in that cell with another Fjordan. He talks about how the justice system here is different than home. And I thought that was a really interesting, again, difference between the Fjordan versus the Ravka. Ravkans, you get arrested, you're going to rot. And in Fjordan, you do something bad, you're dead. Apparently for everyone. They don't
forget about you, though.
No, they don't forget about you, and you're treated probably better than they're treated there. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Matthew or Mateus changes, because right now he's really plagued with these visions of the Heartrender and his feelings
regrets,
for her.
It seems like he's torn with what his feelings should be versus what they are.
Yeah, he talks about how their God will forgive him and all this, and he's like, no, not for my sins, and yet it's are these really sins?
His sin is loving a Grisha.
Yeah, and it's he can't decide, and I think that's really interesting, especially when she eventually gets him out, because we know that's going to happen.
I would hope so.
Yeah. Then we have, the 4 storylines there. We got the prison one right now, the Crows, which we'll definitely have to dive more into, and I want to hold off on that. We have Alina and Mel and the privateer captain, or Sturmhond right now as we know him, which I think is, this episode was definitely...
That was front and center in this episode, yeah.
And then the 4th one would be with Darkling.
The Darkling, yeah.
And I think, which one do you want to tackle outside of the prison one first?
So let's jump in. Let's just keep going in the order of shortest to longest here. Let's jump into the Darkling.
Oh, this one is so good.
So juicy.
Short, so juicy, yes. Man, in this one we find out a lot. One, Genya, right, is brought into General Kerrigan or the Darkling's room, and you can tell that the Darkling is dealing with some kind of sickness, and it seems to be connected to his shadowlings, which you don't really... They mention the name of it, I didn't write it down, so whatever, but it's almost considered an abomination in the Grisha science, it seems like, from the interactions we have with some of the other Grisha there. He asks her to heal him, and so she fixes up his scars as much as she can, which she's like...
Isn't a lot, actually.
Yeah, it isn't, and you can see she's just like, I can't do anything else, and it's, like, baffling to her, like... She's definitely getting some kind of feedback from him when she was trying to heal him and stuff that's very unsettling to her. And so when we leave this scene after she tries to heal these different wounds on him, and even though she tells him like some of it's beyond her, he pretty much just like, you're gonna try.
Right.
And then
it's
when
like,
she does try,
you, too bad. You're gonna keep trying and doing more.
Yeah, and then when she does try, she almost gets attacked from one of the shadow things because what she's doing is effectively attacking them too. Mm-hmm. And so it makes me wonder... I mean, it seems like the Shadowlings almost have a symbiotic relationship with... Or a parasitic relationship, I think is probably a better term for that, with the Darkling. They're sort of feeding off of his life essence in order to have that power.
Because like you see him coughing, exactly, yeah. You see him coughing out blood, being sick, and definitely not in prime condition. And you see her just go into the hallway after she attempts this and just like collapse, crying in horror basically at what she's basically being forced to do or attempting to do.
Yeah, she's effectively gambling her life to try to keep him alive or to heal him. We don't know if she's really keeping him alive or just trying to fix his outer appearance.
And so I kind of looked almost at her attack by the shadow monsters, basically, as being defensive of, oh, you're hurting Kerrigan, we're going to come after you, or, oh, you're siphoning off our life force, so we're going to prevent you from doing that any farther. Yeah. I wasn't sure which way it was going, but it sounds like you're leaning more towards, like, the parasitic, like, you're taking your life force route.
Sort of, I almost view it as, like, maybe what's happening is when she's trying to like heal and like cover up this stuff, it is impacting them negatively. Or like, I'm not taking that what she was doing was siphoning off life force.
No, that they were siphoning off Kerrigan's life force, and she was trying to stop that, and so they were like, don't you dare like interfere with our food. Yeah.
Correct. That's kind of how I took that. So
the other major thing that's going on in that scene there as well is she's asking after David. That's going to be like that empty promise that's never going to be filled. And I think will probably lead to Genya leaving the Darkling service once she realizes that.
But you died, also, right?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
But like you also notice like how this is all about showing that the Darkling is not infallible. He is vulnerable, and he's not at full strength right now. So despite all appearances of him riding in on his horse or riding in on like a white knight last episode to save all the Grisha that were being held captive, he is not like their invincible leader that he once was. And the scars on his face are just like a physical representation of that his power is not infallible.
Oh yeah. Well, yes, and so there is one other scene with him where we, at the end of the episode, and we get to see that he meets up with, was it, not sure who it was. It was another Grisha.
Another Grisha, yeah.
And she seems to be water, right? I mean,
yeah, she seemed to be able to control the water and like the earth or something like where he had hid some items.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of weird. She was like, "Are you just here for the notebook?" And he like just like makes it appear, and she goes and grabs it. I'm like, so why did she need to be here for this? So he didn't have to
I didn't
get
that
it?
part either.
And then the other part, I was like, okay, yeah, to move the waterfall, which wasn't even going that much. Like, I want to know kind of why. I don't know. Maybe she was guarding it. Who knows? But
yeah, but his mom was being kept captive there,
which is wild to me.
Right.
Okay, because if this woman is so old and she's
she's immortal.
Yeah, and she's also a darkling-ish, right? She should have control of that. Why can't she should be able to just get out of this pretty easily.
I think, which is why he had a different type of Grisha, like, imprisoning her. And who knows, maybe, like, she's unwilling to use her powers to the extent that he is, and so she might not be as powerful as him.
That's true. That's very true. And, like, obviously, I mean, even she may be immortal, but... that is bringing up another point we'll get into in a minute here when we go into Alina's timeline, but some of the dreaming and some of the implications there are really interesting. But
For sure.
Bagra's back, so it'll be fun to see kind of what happens with that. I think she's going to probably, her and Genya will probably at some point sort of connect.
Run off, yeah.
And maybe they'll escape together, or who knows.
That's my theory as well, is that the two of them will get out of town and go find Alina.
Yeah. So we want to hit the crows next?
Let's do the crows.
Okay. Oh, man. So the crows are in a bad spot here.
Bad situation.
We have Inej, who is, tailing and getting all the information for them. Pekka Rollins is pretty much decided that... Pekka Rollins, sorry. Is pretty much decided that, I'm going to kill you guys now. And he sets up traps for all of them, which you don't know about until
they're sprung, yeah.
Which was actually pretty cool. It was very clever. He's decided to just wipe the floor with them, and in this episode we get a lot of kind of pushback on Kaz, which we haven't had, and we also get some flashbacks, and you're starting to get more about Pekka Rollins' relationship with Kaz, and it seems like he had a very fatherly mentor figure. He was a fatherly mentor figure to Kaz and Kaz's brother, which starts to help you understand, like, okay, so the reason Kaz hates him so much, and probably hasn't done anything to him, though, is because he's like his dad. He never had. And even though he's done terrible things to him, it's still, I don't know. There's something more there we don't know yet, but...
Well, so I'm going to give a little pushback on that, because I think that the real reason Kaz hasn't done anything to him yet is because he's going to have killed Kaz's brother, who is going to end up being probably like the person that Kaz likes the most or loved the most in this world. And he says it at the diner scene where he's like, killing him's not enough. And he was going to go into more of like a vengeance speech there, but he changed it up, saying how they need to clear their names and pin this all on Pekka as well. And he calls Pekka Collins a con man, basically, not a boss, and saying how he's not actually like a true boss in the barrel. And it's more of a situation, I think, where Kaz has a personal vendetta against him as opposed to a mentor relationship. He might be a little bit of a mentor, but I think it's more of a personal vendetta.
I mean, that's fair, but I kind of hope not, just because when we think about the first season, we don't really get any of those vibes. We get like hatred, distaste, but like not vendetta. And that now it's like completely different. And so, I want to know if it is all of a sudden a vendetta, why wasn't he going after it before? Would be kind of my thing, because all three of them have been a crew for a while. Inej, Jesper, and Kaz, but they haven't like had this goal, and even them they're so surprised by this different Kaz that's appeared, and so I want to know what's sort of shifted here for that. Is it because he took the club and something he loved, and like he had poured himself into that and just tried to forget about it? Like, I need a little bit more to really buy into that. Just thinking about the first season as well.
No, that's a good point. Keeping what happened in season 1 in perspective when we're looking at season 2, using it as a lens to put everything where it belongs.
Yeah, but the heart render here, Nina.
Yeah, just Nina.
Yeah, she's been very helpful.
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah, she's great. I love her. She is honestly like as great as Jesper and all of them are. The crows are, like, she just adds a little extra like yes to it. And I mean, yeah, it's been really, really refreshing to have her as well as Wylan. And I love that Wylan and Jesper already have a relationship. To like Jesper was just like, oh, yeah, I remember, like as they're getting shot at.
This angle, I remember this.
Yeah, so they've definitely done stuff before, which is wonderful. But let's get into some of the traps here. So in this episode, obviously, Kaz is like, we got to take him down. They're going after his books, and they want to, so they can like, sort of throw them away or clear their names, see where the money is. I don't know. it wasn't really put into context like how that was going to help them.
I think that way, like, if they have his books and they see, like, where Pekka is spending his money, it's more of like, hey, so he cares about his money, we see where he's spending it, we can attack those investments and hurt him financially that way. It's kind of how I was interpreting it.
Good connection there, good connection. And we find out that, as I said, Pekka is like, okay, if he wants to play at this, then fine, I'm going to push back and I'm going to kill him. And he hires the Tanner, the Skinner,
some assassin to go after Inej.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting scene. That was a cool scene.
It was a cool scene because, like, obviously Inej has speed and agility. This guy had some of that, but he also had that strength, and it was cool to see how she won in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And if things hadn't worked out as they had, she would have been captured. And she had even mentioned to Kaz before, like, he needs to tell them because he's not just playing with his life, he's playing with their lives. And that sort of came into focus. So it's going to be interesting to see next episode how Inej sort of reacts now, because she almost died because of him. So
completely,
I think we're just starting to see some of the fallout, and we're going to definitely get more Kaz's backstory here. And eventually, when he tells them the truth, they're going to obviously want to support him in this, but they're going to do it in a way that makes more sense than him. Because right now, he is just trying to go after Pekka and just use them instead of working with them.
And see, I think that next episode is going to change that. If I had to guess, I'd say that they're going to come at Kaz and be like, okay, man, enough's enough. We all just almost died. You need to spill the beans and tell us what's going on right now.
Correct.
And then it's going to be more of like I'm anticipating it being like a flashbacky episode where he explains everything that's like led to his fight with Pekka as they're all in hiding and safe.
Yeah. I think that'll be, especially since it's in the plague thing, and
the
his
plague
brother
cemetery.
and him had sort of ended up like in a plague pile or something. We've seen some flashbacks to that. Don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
It'll be interesting to see the fallout from that. I do want to briefly, before we jump into Alina and Mal's storyline here, I do want to jump back just for a moment to the Darklings and talk about, after the first scene with Genya and then the Bagra scene, we actually skipped a scene where he goes in and he's talking to this Grisha, who is one of the alchemist, a Durist, I believe, where, alchemist, one of them.
I think he's alchemy or whatever, because the Durist are the people that fuse the stuff onto you.
Yeah. But he's in there, and he's like talking with him, and you still get like General Kerrigan doesn't really care about him.
Right. He's like, can I use you? Yes or no?
Yeah. If not, then we can end this right now.
Right.
And he's talking about how like, I can give you a little bit of a serum, but really I would have to study to help. And he's like, no, I've chosen this. Like, he wants this relationship with the Shadowlings, and you can tell that they are the things that are hurting him. That's sort of what reinforced my idea that they are parasitic and feeding off of him. So,
but he does also propose an interesting idea. He's like, maybe the only thing that will fix the ailment that you have right now is to do it more.
Yeah.
And the Darkling looks like he's considering that from the look he gives the camera.
That doesn't surprise me. He will. We know that. Yeah. And so let's flash over to Alina and General Kerrigan here, because this was a really interesting. It started off with obviously we saw Sturmhond there, the privateer, as he likes to remind everyone, which is apparently a licensed pirate, basically. Say that, sort of bargain with Alina a bit, but it wasn't, I don't know, it was kind of weird. Like,
it was weird.
It's like, she's just like, you're going to work for me now. And he's like, yeah, of course. Oh, danger, money, why not? It's like,
what's not to like?
Either you have an alternative motive, or that was the stupidest conversion of all time. And I'm not sure what it is. Anyway, she basically runs the ship now, and he may have a thing for her. Don't really know.
I totally called that there was like going to be a little bit of something going on between them.
Yeah, but you know, like, I don't know.
It's not going to amount to anything at all. It's just going to be like a little throwaway thing, I think.
No, but again, you get some really interesting world building here, where in their interaction with the crew, we have the brother and sister there who are apparently heartrenders as well, which is really interesting. And actually, there is quite a few different members of the crew who are Grisha, but they're treated equally. There is no difference between just the regular crewmen and the Grisha crewmen. I mean, other than that, they have abilities. They're on sort of the same playing field, and we see that Alina really like is wow. Imagine if they did this in Ravka. And it's sort of bringing back that how were Grisha treated differently in different places, and I think this is a very interesting one because I think Stormhond is definitely more important than just a privateer. Because in order for him to be a licensed pirate, he has to know people, right? He has to have connections. And so I think there's definitely more to him than we know.
I would agree with that just because you see even how he was the one that was like bankrolling Kaz's adventure from season 1. So he's going to be wealthy. He's going to be important. And the people that he knows, they apparently will give him more money than what the Fjordans are offering him. So
Correct.
We'll see if he keeps faithful to Alina or if he ends up betraying her for a good amount of coin.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is like, he hasn't yet. And he's made her more powerful, if anything.
Right.
Because he does commit his men to go in and he's like, okay, yeah, we're going to find the Sea Whip, the Ice Dragon, whatever. It's referred to as the Sea Whip in the show. And he talks about the Firebird, which is the other one. And so I think it's really interesting because we finally get Alina's plan here. She's like, I'm having dreams about them just like I had dreams about the stag in the first season. And I'm like, well, I wish we could have seen those.
I can't agree more. Oh my god, yeah.
The only dreams we're seeing are the ones between you and the Darkling, which I want to get into in just a moment. But it's she's like, I'm going to try to commune with it, basically. Because she could with the stag, right? The stag and her had this really, like, if she had just, we don't know what would have happened if they didn't kill the stag. But this meeting was very different than the stag meeting.
Very different. Because
the Sea Whip was killing people right around her and was going after Mel, and then she blew its brains out with intensified sun.
Right. She's like, heat lightning.
I know. General her Emperor Palpatine. It's so, I don't know. It's really interesting.
Because, I can't agree with you more. When she was saying that she was kind of having the dreams about the Sea Whip and how she wanted to try to bond with it, I was like, why couldn't you show that? Because, like, right now we're seeing nothing as far as visual confirmation of that goes when we got a lot of that with the stag. And so it seemed almost underwhelming to me, like the interaction with the Sea Whip, almost like it was just any other, like, wild animal. When it's supposed to be like this mythical creature that does it exist? Does it not exist? Oh, it's super powerful for you. It just seemed like any other animal, and that was a little disappointing to me.
Yeah, because we see one of the siblings has like a shark tooth as an amplifier.
Right, yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. I want more information on the amplifiers and that whole process, and I suspect I'd have to read the books to really get that, but it's interesting, just a little weird. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's going to show like her transformation or what she's capable of, because when you think about the stag, that was like her initially very docile, very chill, and then now the Sea Whip, like, she does have some bite. She can attack.
Yeah.
And I think if we think about the Firebird, which is pretty much Phoenix, right? Reincarnation, all that. That's sort of what I get with that. And I'm like, wonder what's going to happen when she puts that on. Dark Phoenix. The sun will burn everything and bring life. I don't know.
The sun will cleanse us all.
Exactly. So I'm going to be interested to see how that changes, because we did see some changes in her in this episode.
We did.
Just her willingness to actually kill the Sea Whip, and the fact too, she was just like, oh, I'm gonna bond with it, as like his men are dying. He's like, oh yeah, we're gonna kill it. She's like, no. It's like, don't. And you're okay sacrificing all these other people except for Mel. Whatever, Alina.
But so I do want to, before we talk about her dreams with Kurgan, I do want to talk about her actually getting the amplifier
Scales.
Bonded to her, and how she loses control from there. And you see, like, she's starting to go already. We talked about it last episode, the power madness. Like, you're seeing that power amplification go up, and just what that's doing to mess with her sanity and her ability to control her powers. She doesn't seem to be able to control this amount of power yet. I don't know if that's going to be something that where Mel brought him back from the brink, or before she destroyed the ship, or if she's going to have to, like, train with Bagra again, or what's going to happen to get her powers in check. What do you think?
I'm not sure. I do think we're going to have some kind of scene where she's training again with somebody. Because it can't just be her just like, I'm souped up, now I'm ready to go. Like, no.
And so it also did sound to me like she was going to try to take on the Fold with just this second amplifier.
Oh, well, I thought she was going to go with another one. I thought that's why she said we got to stop in East Ravka and then go to the Fold.
Okay,
because,
maybe I missed that part.
I mean, yeah, she was like, she had said that.
Because I heard the name drop of the Firebird. I just didn't hear her say, yeah, now we're on to the Firebird.
Well, she didn't say now we're on to the Firebird. She said we got to go to East Ravka and then the Fold.
Okay.
And so that's why I'm assuming, like, oh, the Firebird's going to be in East Ravka. Honestly, I'm expecting at some point in this episode, we're going to get more, or in this season, we're going to get more of the shoe. And the reason I say that is because they've been name dropped so much this season.
A lot of hinting with them, yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm actually really excited about that because I'm like, I want to know their culture. And we learn a little bit about it. Like, they do not consider like, it seems like they're very much full-blooded shoe or no shoe at all. And so it's going to be interesting to see that. Now, let us talk about the dreams.
And this is probably one of the most interesting parts of it to me.
Definitely connected, like you had said last time. Definitely connected. And in this episode, we get a little bit more with Kerrigan sort of hinting at that she's pretty much immortal too. What were your thoughts on the dreams?
So, I think that the first one, she's basically telling the Darkling to go and play with himself because she's not going to be a part of his party anymore. Not going to wear black anymore. Never wear his colors again. All of that, that's her, like, liberating herself from the control of the Darkling. Which, good for her. The one I really want to talk about, though, is after she gets the amplifier. Yeah. And how the Darkling's like, ooh, you're more powerful now. And just, like, see that hole in his hand glowing and everything. And how he does, in his little villain monologue speech, talk about how she's going to have to choose between, like, power and humanity, and how she's going to leave Mal behind as she gets older but doesn't age, and he does and dies, and all of this stuff to try to isolate her and bring her back to, like, understanding his side of things. And it was a very interesting conversation, because if that is the case, and then she will be immortal and Mal will just age and die, will she be able to maintain her humanity? Will she be able to, still be Alina Starkov, or will she fully transition to become Dark Sun Summoner?
Dark Phoenix. Just one giant analogy for the Dark Phoenix saga. I don't know. It's going to be some interesting questions. Also, too, I was just thinking about this when we're talking about the amplifiers. They take pieces of these creatures and they infuse it into a person. Why can't they take more? Like, they took 2 scales off of the Sea Dragon. Does the rest just disappear? Or why can't, like, every single one of those Grisha get, like, a scale?
It's because you have to be the one to kill it to get the amplification, to have it work for you. That's why she had to kill the Sea Whip, because if she didn't, she wouldn't be able to infuse its essence with her.
Yeah.
So yeah, otherwise, they should just, like, line up everyone's arms with the scales and call it a day and get their own little boosted Grisha army.
Yeah, that's true. And that's why the one sibling had the shark tooth and the other did not.
Right.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm excited for episode 3.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to episode 3. I'm thinking that we're going to get a little bit more of a story-driven episode as opposed to an action-driven episode for this one. And that's completely fine, considered how rapid this pace is moving. But yeah, it's a lot that can still happen. I'm really looking forward to see if we get more with the Darkling and explore, like, his vulnerable side, or if it's just going to be something that kind of happens gradually throughout the episode until he goes, like, full shadow monster himself.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see. And I'll be curious to see what Bagra says about his little shadow puppets.
Yeah, well, that's going to do it for this episode. So this is going to be Two Nerds signing off. We'll see ya.
See ya.